Thank you, Chavi ma'am. Thank you, Achal. I would like to thank School of Architecture and Design, DIT University, and Council of Architecture Training and Research Center at Bhopal, to organize this event. I'm very happy that we are basically talking about this whole aspect of hills and what needs to be there. I think so. Last year, basically, Triple I, the Roorkee also had organized this idea of a workshop of what can happen with the idea of hills and what are the kind of policies which are coming in place. So I'm very happy that people are basically taking active actions, into looking at this set of architecture. Just to go a little further, of course, this is the first set of slide, but uh, Chabi ma'am already basically introduced, the idea of what I do. So these are the kind of four publications, and they all largely adhere to the idea of wood crafts, wooden architecture, vernacular architecture, traditional crafts, and that's the idea of a domain that we have generally been largely working towards it. We've been working partly in Himachal, Uttarakhand, Rajasthan, Punjab, Haryana on variety of different projects, largely related to crafts, traditional architecture, and furniture. So uh, let me kind of give you a little broad overview. My focus has been more towards the Himachal Pradesh, though we have worked, partly in Uttarakhand, in largely in Kumaon and the Lohagat region. But our major area of focus has been on Himachal vernacular architecture. Its study, we have also basically partnered with the University of Melbourne and Australia India Institute to do furthermore work and research on that. So I'm going to give context of Himachal as a larger, broader context, to put down as the Himalayan terrain and what can really happen within this area. That's the Satluj Valley in Shimla. And one of the interesting part about this is when we are there, the idea of even language, etymology, and the way people basically address the land is very different, unlike the plains. So when we are there and when we ask, we want to go down to, let's say, another village, or let's say Pujali or something, and they would always say Uspar, and that became kind of very interesting at some point to really, understand how really the language plays. And even the idea of distance are completely different. So the way people understand hills and the way people understand the plains are absolutely very different. Just to give you a little more idea towards the altitude map, so the elevation zones are one of the basically top notch over here. So from basically 100 to, let's say, nearly 4,200 meters, is the elevation zone, and hence the idea of, climate becomes extremely important. If one looks at the map of Himachal Pradesh, the altitude basically go from nearly 300 to 7,000, at this point. And that makes the entire also Himachal kind of quite variant, in terms of its climate, in terms of even architecture, at that point. Seismically, interestingly, Gujarat and Himachal basically, so Gujarat where I belong and Himachal both basically lie, in the zone 5 region, at this point. And though Gujarat has more flat terrain versus Himachal as a hilly terrain, it both the approach towards the architecture is very different. The forest cover is one of the important aspect at this point, which currently Chavi is also talking about the SDG and the idea of climate change, environmental protection. So the forest becomes one of the important aspect. Interestingly, Himachal, Uttarakhand, Jammu Kashmir, the entire belt has got a kind of a dense forest versus Gujarat. Yet both of them actually hold wooden architecture. Of course, different nature at this point, but they do cater to a kind of a responsive set of an architecture at this point. So this is the overall forest cover, basically, which comes down within the Himachal. Largely, it nearly covers 64%, but of course, this is an old data, so current scenario and the state would be, quite different. Some of the important cedar tree, which basically becomes a shal, sesam, and very important is basically Devdar, because Devdar is the one which is largely used in order to construct the architecture, which is called Kathkuni. So what is a Kathkuni architecture? It's a very simple term. So Kathkuni, even basically within Hindi or within Gujarati, it means Kathkuno, which is the 90-degree angle. So anything which basically comes at a 90-degree angle. So that was the kind of a colloquial way to basically address this architecture. So what happens over here is the wood and stone architecture. So what happens at the angle or at the junction becomes extremely important, right? So it's called wood and stone architecture or Caton cribbage, if within the European terms, if one wants to put it. The idea over here is the layers of wood and stone, they come together, and wood becomes a kind of a, let's say, tensile member which holds things together, and stone takes the compression load. Uh, if you look at an overall village, this is how a cluster of a village which is there. So this is a village in Jakhnoti, and you see in the center, this is where the temple, basically tower temple, remains and has got a courtyard or the flat land, and rest all the houses, the granaries, are clustered around that. So a typical village would normally have a temple where there is a flat land. This is where largely a tower temple would come into place. And then the one basically houses are kind of put across. But major of them are facing towards the valley and facing towards the south. And each of these houses, either they are clustered as basically family and would have a granary, or they would have an independent basically granary at this point. So if you look at the Google map, that's a kind of a dot of this Dagoli village that we visited. A typical house, of let's say Kathkuni construction would have ideally basically it starts from 2 story to 3 story to nearly it goes to 8 story when you look at the tower temple. And over here, the bottommost is where they house, the livestock. So cows, goats, buffaloes. Very rarely we have seen that, but and the middle floor is the one where it becomes a kind of a storage unit, and the top one acts as a living quarter. A granary is also, in some sense, a replica, of the house, but there are variant in terms of granary because they are more like an independent set of structure. They're largely made out of wood in order to house their stock throughout the year. Temples are an interesting facet because there are a variety of different set of temples, because temples still embark very strongly within the Himachal plateau, and the Kathkuni architecture or vernacular architecture still gets practiced within the temple domain over here. So they are like a standalone set of scenario. And then comes Darbargarhs. Darbargarhs are more like a palace houses. They still have basically called them Raja and Rani at this point, but though the status is not there, they are still respected people within the entire community over there. So what are the typology and the variants which comes within the Kathkuni architecture? So a typical house, this is the house in Jubbal that we went. It's a layering of stone and wood. Uh, Now, if you put this house in terms of a module, essentially it is a single module which basically then goes stacked up, and then it goes sideways. So it goes 3 layers up and then it goes 3 layers this way. And then there are variants which happens due to the way the configuration happens, but otherwise a largely spatial configuration remains very similar. The change basically that happens, which you see over here, this is 1 module, 2 module, 3, 4, is largely in terms of types of construction, which happens, the quality of construction, a little bit of scale at this point. And what happens the mainly is towards the way the balcony gets represented. In the temple typology, if you really look at it, this is the Kathkuni temple basically in Sarahan. When we went there, they were still building the main one, and the Devi was housed in another one. But currently, the scene would be different because you will actually see 2 basic tower temples at this point. So within the temple typology, they are largely identified by the roof, right? And because roof becomes one of the most complex aspect of a temple. So if one looks at it, it will have a gable roof, pent and gable, composite tower temple, which becomes a kind of independent type, and multi-tiered pyramidal roof. So because roof is one of the, let's say, represents, the efficiency of craftsmanship within that region. So roof becomes an important element for the temples. These are the few examples what you see over here. So that's in Barmor, we see gable, and then in Pent and gable in Matwani, and in Jubbal is basically pent roof, and the Masu Devata temple in Anup Jubbal is also the pent roof. Major of these temples are largely, let's say, organized or basically controlled or administered by the community themselves. That's a tower temple in Jakhnoti, and that's the Parashar Rishi temple in Mandi. When we were there in Mandi, interestingly, we asked the Pandit, how old is this temple? And he says, oh, Sarji, it's 10,000 years old, and you say, okay, fair enough, So there are a lot of legends and myths which are revolving around these temples. Granary are either independent granary or they are part of the house at this point. So if one basically looks at it, uh, independent granary would be in a similar style either to a katkhuni or they're completely made out of wood. Or basically the one which are housed are like a box within a house or a room itself dedicated as a granary within this. And then there are clusters of granary that happens. The examples, what you see over here, the top one is largely Chitkul, the bottom is Jubal, and then the right side is the Chaknoti. So they used to use actually the wooden shingles at the top, which then turned to more towards the slate stone. And later on, due to the non-availability, also the idea of craftsmanship, also the availability of metal, it has now basically moved to metal, which they call as chaddar, as a roof. So what is this practice? We'll kind of have a little peep through that. Uh, this is the temple in Chitkul, which is largely getting constructed. And very interestingly, we kind of met a couple of people over there, the master crafts people, and they taught us or at least shared with us the kind of thumb rules which are kind of, in prevalent over there, vis-a-vis the number of steps that has to happen, the kind of guts that they basically do, some aspect of rituals and methods and processes, and which we'll talk later on as we go further. So if you look at basically Kathkuni, essentially it's an infill masonry building systems with layered horizontal wooden beams, right? And it is a non-rigid structure, as I explained. So bottom is the stone layer which happens, which holds this entire building together. And the bottom or the plinth is the one which is a stone which collects or are kind of put down across, let's say, from the surrounding, so the one which they basically flatten the land. This is the same stone which are largely used in order to build this. And the middle layer is the stone and wood. And as you start going up, the wooden infill becomes, let's say, more, within the interiors, and then comes the roof part. So as I said, there are largely 4 layers: stone plinth, the walls, the projected balcony, and the roof. So these are larger 4 set of components which gets identified within the Kathkuni. This is the foundation and plinth that I was talking about, which takes the load of the building. This is the temple in Pujali 7. It has been taken over by ASI, and currently it has become completely non-functional. They actually say ASI took it over, renovated it, put it together. But one of the beliefs that they had is that there was a lot of treasure which was hidden in this. We waited for nearly 2 hours for the person to come down, but we could never enter into this. But we thought this was an interesting set of an example. The wood and stone walls become one of the most interesting aspect of this. It has a dry masonry system, So at any point, they do not use anything like a cement mortar or any kind of a basically binding mortar, within the stones. So during this visit, we saw actually one of the building which was little bit teda, on the side, and we asked, "Kya hua?" Says, "Saab धरती हिला था, तो थोड़ा टेढ़ा हो गया building." I said, "तो क्या करोगे?" अरे कुछ नहीं सर, वापस धरती लेगा सीधा हो जाएगा, And that's a kind of a attitude that they have. So at this point, moment there are basically, let's say, land shocks or anything happens, few of the stone pieces might also basically fall down and they put it back, and it is kind of maintained by the local people themselves over here. A detail of a wall is one of the most, let's say, remarkable feature of this construction. So what they do is they have got 2 layers of stone, the layers of basically wood, which kind of, becomes a time member. And the in-between member is called manvi, which kind of holds these pieces together. At the edge, they have a pivotal junction. So what happens is it allows the building to be a little more flexible, and allow it to be moved, right? Now, that becomes an interesting feature because it allows the movement of building during the earthquake or during the land movements over here. And it is being joined by kadil, which is a wooden nail which happens. The inner layer which happens between the two is all the rubble which is lying around, which during the construction is being filled up, and it becomes like an insulation material over here. A cornerstone becomes one of the most important part because this is where the puja happens. So during the process of construction, this is the first layer of wood and stone basically is being put, and this is the only one which juts out, and they put the cornerstone. Uh, there are multiple reasons for it, as if it's like the initiation of the house ceremony, and the stone essentially protects the jutting out wood and stone, from the rain. Floorings are of a different kind of nature. So in a lot of places, they actually basically use, the base is made of stone, and then they put mud as an infill at the plinth level. But as we start going up, the flooring essentially becomes wooden flooring, and they have a smaller holes which allow people to move in and out through the building. The balconies are an interesting feature because they give a character to not only the building but also house multiple set of functions. So either the house can have one-sided balcony or it can be like a circumambulatory path, and it is moving around the. And this is where the communication with community, the food, drying of, let's say, vegetables or making of achar, a lot of things happen at the balcony. So balcony becomes one of the hub, of the architecture over here. Roofs, as I say, are one of the most complex component of the building. The complexity and the style of the roof basically indicates how much knowledge the craftspeople had at this point. Now, one of the very interesting features that you see in both this roof at this point, one of them is a Chatrari temple, and on the right hand side you see is the house. A house where you see the roof has been made by layers of wooden members which are horizontal, unlike a colonial construction where they basically put them like a gable as a diagonal member. So that is one of the most interesting feature of the roof at this point. As we start basically going further, there are multiple variants which happens within the roof. And roof is the one which holds this entire building together. So if one looks at the building, it is more like a human body, where the foundation is your leg, and then this body is there, and the head it comes on the top, and balconies are your projecting hands. These are the different types of basically roof that we basically saw in earlier and we discussed. As I said, the construction of the roof becomes very important. So on the wooden members, the stone is essentially laid, and they're being a lot of time they are either just put down or they are pinned with a single nail. Now that nail acts as basically makes them flexible. So during the earthquake, the idea of flexibility becomes important. So the entire building moves, and the energy rising from the bottom goes to the top and gets dissipated. Another significance of roof is largely religious. So the top layer of the roof is the ridge pole, right? That becomes the most important part largely for the temple. Now there is a saying that when they're building the temple, the ridge pole is got from the forests of gods, Devtaka basically one. And over there, only a few people of the community go. They perform a ritual. Nobody's allowed to basically be part of that. And when they cut down the tree, right, it is a saying that the tree should not touch the ground. So from that point till the point of the site, it is being brought without it being put down on the ground, And that's an interesting part because multiple scientific reasons which might be associated to that, but also a kind of an arduous process, in order to bring this ridge pole. The ridge pole is put down last during the construction of the temple, and in order to embark the, let's say, the procession of the god, a sacrifice of a goat is done on the ridge pole, on the top, and that's when the inauguration of temple happens. As we looked at the components of the Kathkuni house, this is largely a visual representation of decoding the house from the other way around, from basically a designer's or architect's viewpoint, saying that the house is built. Now let's look at how many different types of components which are being used, within this house. So a house would have, this many number of layers of wood which is being used. The interesting part about that is that over here they use forest as a mode of investment, and I'll come down to that. So in this house, essentially, this is one of the study which was done by Lorenzo, taking the kind of work that we had done. And very interestingly, he actually came out, and we still need to confirm that, but he came out and he actually has put down saying 79,000 kg of wood has been used in order to produce this house. Now, the house that he has taken is one of the most finest and the biggest house within the village, and the same, he basically took it out for also the stone. A construction sequence of a house basically is more like a layered, right? So it becomes the first layer is the plinth, and then it basically goes on the top. So the house basically never gets constructed the way in an urban area where the column gets constructed and then the frame and this. It actually basically happens in layers and layers. So first the entire wall comes in, and then they basically take it till the roof, put the roof, and then some of the internal floors which are left would be made. So who are the people who make these buildings, right? So that becomes one of the most important aspect, because if we talk about the SDG goals and if we talk about the idea of environment, climate protections, one should start talking about the traditional and the local knowledge, which resides, as an empirical tacit knowledge among the makers, right? So these are the makers who still know how to build vernacular architecture, how to really basically construct this traditional set of buildings. But at the same time, what is more important is that they have in some sense, an inbuilt knowledge to produce sustainable architecture, responsive architecture, something which is, let's say it can withstand seismic forces, within this Himalayan region. And I think so we should really look at, somewhere getting or basically kind of transforming or transferring this body of knowledge to a younger generation, which is very important. Now, how does let's say a Mistri, come into picture? So when they're planning to basically build a temple, the committee kind of comes in place. So Gur, or basically Mali, which is the priest, becomes a medium between the god and the let's say the Mistri who is going to be there. So over here, essentially, the god decides who will build the temple. So the priest comes in a trance, and he actually basically performs puja, and he identifies the Mistri who will build the temple. The reason why I'm basically, so it's like a master craftsperson who's going to build this temple. The master craftsperson comes in front of the committee. He's being asked whether you want to build this temple or not. This is one of the most prestigious projects that one would ever do, and hence it becomes important for them to commit to this project. Over here, if you look at it, the center person is the master craftsperson who's building the temple behind. Now, there are series of unwritten rules, which the person has to follow if he accepts to build a temple. So one of them is to basically kind of leave his village and stay at the temple site. Now, the temple could take from basically 5 years to 15 years, depending on the type of construction and the kind of process which is involved. So he has to over there basically have food only one time. He can only eat the food prepared by the people in the temple. He cannot eat outside. He has to not shave. He cannot wear basically leather chappals, and he cannot copulate. He cannot have basically kids during this time. There are a lot of scientific reasons basically associated to this, like leather is not allowed. Shaving during the earlier times might basically give infection. Having food at the local basically premises would help him, maintain his health. Eating one time would help him maintain again basically the health part of it. And not basically going back to his family becomes important, because over here going back to the family takes nearly months, and hence the work on the temple may stop. So there are a lot of rules which are around them, and people actually basically more or less follow them also. So as I said, wood is essentially brought from the forest, of gods, right? And there is an elaborate rituals. This is a place called Gawas, and we actually accidentally discovered this place, and it was absolutely phenomenal, and look at the kind of architecture which has evolved over a period of time at this point. So as I said, over there, the idea of investment is largely within the community, within the region. So it was a belief that when a child is born in the house, they would actually invest into trees, so they will actually basically sow around, let's say, 30, 40 trees. So when the child essentially starts growing up, the tree would also grow up, and it becomes a kind of a part of an investment ritual, process. So it is like giving back to the forest and then taking from the forest, so it becomes like a cyclic set of a process which was there. What are the associated crafts which are there within the traditional buildings? So if you look at it within the building crafts, it is wood carving, wood turning, carpentry, structural crafts, wood finishing, painting, and then stone and metal crafts. But wood becomes one of the primary area of crafts within this. So if you look at wood carpentry, it is embodied with extreme amount of, let's say, technical knowledge, right? Not only about the material, but about what they want to build. And at the same time, there's a folk, or there is a kind of a native set of a, let's say, aesthetics which are associated with that, and they also believe that they are the descendants. So basically, the carvers believe that they are the descendants of Vishwakarma, at this point, and they got this knowledge from their forefathers, and they would like to continue that. So there are a variety of different, basically structural woodcraft knowledge which is embodied among the people over there. Uh, this is the palace in Theog, and look at the kind of span that they've been able to do only with the idea of wooden construction, and it's pretty phenomenal at this point. These are the wood carvings which are there, and wood carvings become an integral part of the Himachal hill architecture. One of the uh, let's say fascinating part is the folk expressions that they are able to produce. So even the epic stories like Krishna, Mahabharata, are represented more in a folk style, along with the local set of belief, and which are being there. Wood turning is also an integral part. So a lot of time, basically, they make these jhalars, which are kind of surrounding those buildings. And whenever there is a wind or anything basically blows, they kind of make a very lovely sound. So there's always a kind of, somewhere this is in rhythm with the landscape which is happening. Also, what you look at the cone and flower motif, which is basically from the top, and there's a whole set of uh, let's say, history behind the cone and flower motif that you see on the top rail, and that is where this same patterns or similar set of patterns have been found in Italy, in Egypt, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Gujarat, and there is a possibility that this is the kind of pattern which was basically, in some sense, was traveling, either through objects, either through basically architecture, or the people which are basically there through the silk trade, or through the basically land route which was there, and it's very interesting how all of this pattern appear at different places in different times. The wood finishing and painting becomes also one of the important part. So murals within the temple are seen at many places. But at the same time, coloring the wood and ornamenting it, also is one of the most important feature within this. Stone carving has not been very, let's say, prominent within this region, because stones are largely being used in order to uh, basically finish and cut down and put over here. But at many places, you still find a very archaic set of carving, which is on the stone. And metal crafts has been, in some sense, a more recent introduction, but the earlier set of metal crafts more towards the sheet metal, and making of the coins, making of handles, making of chains, inscribed copper plates, possibly some of the masks, what they basically would do. So those are the ones which were very commonly found, uh, and not really as a construction part of the building. So let's look at this as a more timeless way of building, Now, if you look at the overall period, basically, so this is the a kind of a overall view of what was a traditional Karkhuni, then the idea of expanded veranda came in, a glazed, then the metal roofing, and now the basically flat roof and the concrete structure. So in some sense, this is a kind of a progression which has been happening over a period of time. Though all of this architecture are largely simultaneously also practiced, within the Himachal. So if you look at a larger, basically 8, broader areas, within which this architecture would sit. In some sense, this also sits within the larger SDG goals, within the hilly regions. So one can take this also forward. One is that they start using the local material, so they were made by the wood and the stone which was obtained around. Of course, now there are stringent set of policies which are basically coming into place on how one can procure wood or how can basically, whether the mining of the stone which happens. But if one kind of streamlines this, there is a lot of possibility to kind of do a more cyclic method, of production. So still in the upper regions, in the rural regions, one would still find people making out of the local materials. But more urban centers have now moved to concrete brick set of a construction. In terms of climate, the architecture essentially responds to 3 sets, so from summer, basically rainy times and the snow. So if you look at the curvilinear roof, right, it actually would allow the snow, to fall but would not allow it to completely slip down like a gable roof. So over here, it makes like a ice dam, right? And that becomes an insulation layer, during the winters. At the same time, the livestock, which is part of the house at the bottom, would emit heat. And that is what will basically kind of go up and keep the house warm. Uh, During the winters, the entire house can be locked and they can just travel from internally within, through the small ladders which are there within the house. Versus in summer, they actually basically come out and balconies become one of the most important part of the building. Construction process, as we kind of explained, that it's a very simple set of a construction process and does not require very high-end tool. What it requires is essentially wooden logs and the dressing of the stone. But more important part is that whatever the kind of output which is arrived or derived from dressing of the stone is being put back into the building, and hence it becomes a zero waste effort over here. Stacking, so essentially for a seismic zone to have a very complex form of architecture or basically the buildings is what leads to disasters. So over here, the cuboidal stacking, which happens, which becomes one of the most simplest form of architecture, and putting it across, and facing the sun would allow insulation to happen, allow basically heat to come in when it is needed. Second, the basically material basically is put down from the around, and all the debris which is being collected is put back into the same set of a building. As I said, that it is also structurally resilient. So the plinth or the base would take the major of the load of the entire building. But as you start going up, the entire building then slowly becomes lighter and the roof becomes a heavier part which holds the building together. Now, because the roof tiles are made individually, so during the energy, let's say basically dissipation, some of the tiles may basically get off, but the entire roof does not fall off. Unlike a metal roof, which is one rigid structure. So if you see basically during the Kashmir earthquake and some of the images, the entire roof has either blown away, or it has basically, kind of fallen off. And that is what would generally not happen over here due to the layered stones which are kept on the top. Community integration becomes one of the most important parts. So over here, the entire community in some or the other manner comes together to build the building. And everybody has a different role to play over here. So women also has an interesting role because if you look at the houses, each of these houses also have different types of chulha, which is there. And those chulas are made by the women themselves, knowing how many members they are there, what kind of vessels they have, what size of the vessels they have, and what is the cooking method or the process. So in that sense, they become also a part of a building construction, industry. And uh, when a temple gets built, a larger set of community gets part of that building of the temple. Uh, as we say that the material is largely obtained from the surrounding, and hence it becomes, material which can withstand the climate. Uh, no synthetic materials which are being used in the traditional time. Now there's a mix of multiple different kind of materials coming into picture, like concrete, metal, but there is a possibility on way it can be harnessed. So mud was used a lot of time on the wall, one as insulation, second also as an antiseptic material. A lot of these wood members, which are devdar, they actually do not need to be oiled very frequently like other set of wood. They just need to be scrubbed, in order to remain largely, moist and dry. So they also used to sometimes wash them in order to basically contain the moisture level within them. But otherwise, the maintenance was fairly easy for this set of buildings. In terms of efficiency, I thought they were kind of very well suited to the lifestyle of the people. At the bottom was the livestock. The top layer, what you see is mezzanine, what basically, was the stock for the hay for the animals. The storage room comes in the center, which basically would have either granary or actual basically storage, which happens. And the top layer becomes the living room with kitchen as one of the most important part, largely due to the chula, and the heat which it generated, and which allowed the family to congregate in and around. And then comes the balcony, which becomes a threshold between the house and the community. So what are the kind of parallel building craft practices which are there within the Himalayas, right? So if you look at basically the entire Himalayan range and the plateau, we have wood and stone in Bhutan and Sikkim, Koti Banal, which is there in Uttarakhand, Katkhuni, and basically Daji in also Himachal, and Tak and Daji in Kashmir. But as we start going little further, and if we start looking at, let's say, Bhatar, around Gilgit, and Nuristan, Afghanistan, they all have a wooden stone. Of course, the kind of architecture as well as expression, as well as the building methods changes, but all of them have got some of the other semblance, which is running across this terrain. This largely happened due to basically the Silk Route, as I mentioned earlier, and the other trade routes. So the knowledge transfer, as well as the kind of, let's say, tacit knowledge, empirical knowledge, from generations moved across different planes and regions within this. A few examples that I'm going to basically talk about. So that's a Daji Diwari construction over here. And there are many variations, of this construction, which is also found in Himachal, but also at the same time, it is found in Britain. It's called as half timbered, basically, or Himis construction, in Britain. Or Himis in Turkey, Patchwork in Germany, Colombage in France, and Daji Diwari in Himachal, and it's a similar, but it's a framed set of a construction which is there, unlike a Katkhuni construction. The Koti Banal is very similar to the Katkhuni style, but at many places the use of wood is lesser in Koti Banal, largely also due to the availability of the material, but at the same time also because it is lesser seismic zone than also Himachal. So there are various aspects through which it has come together. The Tak construction in Kashmir, it's largely a load-bearing masonry constructions with wood beams across, and the structural walls also exhibit this wooden bands, which is a devdar wood, which is being used at multiple floor levels. Uh, it has a more of a squarish plan than a rectangleish plan, So in terms of its building, it has a more, square. So kind of, putting things in place vis-a-vis the uh, context. So we come to the last set of a slide. So if you really look at the, let's say, Karthoni construction or the vernacular architecture within the hills, or the indigenous construction practice, they actually kind of address variety of issues in multiple ways. So they are sensitive to the environment, they are responding to the context, and hence in this case they're seismic and hence become seismic resilience. In terms of energy efficiency, yes, they are kind of proven, that they keep the heat inside during the winters and they're cooler during the summers. They also adhere to the lifestyle and the social pattern of the people. They are a representation of knowledge of craftspeople and their practices over time. They belong to a community as the entire community in some or the other manner becomes part of this entire set of construction processes which are there. And the material which it kind of holds is what is derived from local, from surrounding, and hence it also becomes weather resistant, because it is grown or it is largely grown in the same region. The design of the architecture represents, not only the community, but also in some sense is aligned to the context, to the mountains, and it basically fits within that region. And during this entire process, you will also see that there are a lot of smaller predefined thumb rules. There are a lot of smaller innovations in terms of tools, in terms of the way things are being put together. And hence it is constantly growing, over a period of time. Of course, it is little slow. And then there are a lot of other issues from deforestations to the kind of new rules which are kind of coming in place. But there is a possibility to learn from this building construction practices, from the craftspeople who are actually putting this together, from this empirical knowledge, which is housed within the building, as well as the crafts community, through generations of transfer. And in my opinion, when one looks at basically putting anything which is talking about the sustainable goals, one should and will have to bring this people who have this knowledge on board to become part of this committee or part of this group, uh, to find solutions which are very regional, local, and contextual. And I think so. With that, I would like to end my presentation.
A very good morning to all of you. And today I'll be talking about the dialogues on the sustainable development goals in the hilly areas. So as you all can see, I'll be talking majorly about the application of building technologies in rural mountains, generating livelihood, women empowerment and capacity building. Before that, let's have a look at what are the challenges right now which Uttarakhand is facing. The first vertical is need for disaster resilience. So as we all know, and we have also seen in the previous talk, that this particular area comes under the zone 4 and 5 of country seismic zone map. And the annual average income loss is around 2545 crores as per the disaster risk report. The third is the residential and public buildings, which accounts for about 57.4 and 4.4% of these losses. The second vertical is need for livelihood generation. In this, around 700 villages out of 16,000 in the state were completely abandoned. And as we all know, due to this ongoing current COVID scenario, almost 20,000 people have returned out of 70,000 migrated in Pauri Garhwal. The third vertical is need for resource optimization. So as per the tourism infrastructure, it is expected that the arrival of tourists will increase by 3 times by 2030. And increase in consumption of cement and steel in mountain regions. It is arising due to the low awareness about the consumption and efficiency of use within the community of that region. So these are the 3 major challenges which Uttarakhand is facing right now. Now let's see what are the opportunities for Uttarakhand and the vision for 2030. The first is SDG 13, Climate Action, which focuses on the reduce, avoid, and removal of greenhouse gas emissions. The second goal is SDG 8, which focuses on the generation of employment for around 850,000 people in medium, small, micro enterprise. And the last SDG is SDG 12, responsible consumption. The major focus of this SDG is to produce production processes, and they should attempt to conserve raw materials in order to eliminate toxic and dangerous raw materials which are a major threat to the environment. So now we have seen the challenges and we have also seen the opportunities. The next step is what should be the approach towards achieving that particular vision. As you all can see, there are total 4 keywords. So these are not just the keywords, but the stepping stones to achieve it. And it will only be achieved if the integration of localization of building materials and Atmanirbharta, the self-dependency, the self-resiliency of state through local economy generation and creating climate resilience. This is the overall comprehensive picture of the above mentioned definition which I have just said, and it will only be achieved through construction of disaster safe buildings which will result into disaster resilient infrastructure. Second is the improved environment which will account to the natural resource optimization. The third is community participation, which is the most important one, and the heritage continuity, which will result in the social and cultural inclusion. And the fourth, again a very important point, increased livelihood opportunities, which will only happen through local economy generation. Now, before starting as how you achieve that particular model, let's delve into the sustainable methods of construction that were practiced in the past, a brief outline and a brief glimpse of those practices. We have already seen in the previous talk that what is the importance of this particular architecture, which is known as the Koti Banal in Uttarakhand area. And the interesting features about this is the presence of interlocking timber bands. As you can see on each and every level of the story, the sill level, the window level, there are the presence of these timber bands which are holding it together. The second point is the masonry, which is being used in the foundation for walls, the stone one. And for your information, as we all know, the damage that was caused due to the Kedarnath floods, the interesting point was that it was the main shrine of the temple of the Kedarnath only managed to survive. That was majorly because of the stone, the strength that it provided to that particular temple. And it was because of that only the foundation was able to bear the tremendous amount of pressure of water. So this shows that how much important it is for a building to have good amount of materials used within itself. The third point is the presence of seismic bands to avoid the earthquake, the damage caused due to the earthquake. And at that time, the availability of local material was also quite easy as compared to today's scenario. And you can see that all the openings are on the same side of the building, allowing the maximum daylight and the ventilation inside it. Now, if you all can see, there is a red circle which is showing that how the new structure is being integrated to the old one. We don't know how correct it is. We are not aware what are the technologies behind it or how the structural integration is happening. Now let's see what are the current practice of construction in the hilly area. So what is happening now is the stone is declining in most of the parts, or it is being done with the usage of small size stones and mud. And due to the restricted access to wood, cement and concrete are emerging as an option for creating the intermediate slabs for the roof. The stone construction has been combined with concrete block masonry in the second picture if you see. and there is no concept of through stones. So you see how the construction practices are being evolved and how it is being merged with the traditional one. Another example, as we all can see that the reinforced cement concrete slab is coming as a preferable option. And typically 9 by 9 inches and 9 by 12 beams are being used, which are not at all appropriate for this particular area or for this particular construction as per the terrain. And the structural integration is quite bad due to the techniques used behind that. Hence, it is giving a potential to more efficient options such as prefab concrete elements. This is another ongoing example, the phase of aspiration, brick construction and the framed RCC structure. So these three pictures show that how the brick houses and RCC framed structure are being used with the construction of beams and columns. So these are the ongoing trend. Another example, as you can see how the new construction is blending with the old houses. Very low awareness is there amongst the people regarding the basic principles. And there is almost no use of the reinforced cement seismic bands for earthquake resistance. So during earthquake, this might pose a major threat to the terrain and to the environment and to the people itself. There is no proper reinforcement resist the bending movement. Poor quality of shuttering often leaves the hole in supporting walls, and if the walls are weak, so definitely overall quality of the structure will be affected. Now we have seen the challenges, the vision of 2030 Uttarakhand, and the construction practices, how they have evolved with time. From here onwards, I'll talk about the project which has majorly tried to achieve the SDGs working with the community on ground to some extent. So the major focus of the project was to introduce eco-friendly technology options for disaster-safe construction in mountain ecosystems, in which the several technologies were being demonstrated in the community building itself by the community. And after that, the enterprises were also being set up once they were being trained and taught and the skill upgradation was done. The focus was majorly on the 3 villages of Uttarkashi, and these are the date of start and completion, and followed by the geographical focus. Just to give you all a very brief idea about the objective, like how we started and how did we achieve all these objectives. The very first one was the process development, which was to assess the existing traditional construction practices of that particular cluster. The second was, once you identify the technology, you make them available on a decentralized level so that everyone can access it in the form of enterprise. The third one was the technology integration, in which lots of building designs and templates were prepared, having different design options and the technologies, like how they can be incorporated. The fourth one was the most important and the highlighted part of the project, in which the local artisans, masons, and the women groups were trained to build their capacities and to make them skilled, which further resulted into the development of enterprise packages. The last one was the scientific knowledge generation, in which the technologies that were being implemented on ground, they were further tested for the assessment of cost factor, thermal comfort, and safety. This is the location map, this is the overall map of Uttarakhand, and the purple highlighted part is the area where the focus was. These are the 3 highlighted villages in red, and these are the few selection criteria behind these villages. So from now, I'll take you that how part 1, part 2, so on and so forth was achieved to have that sustainable model. So part 1 was the intervention process, in which the assessment and selection of technology was being done. And it is a very proud and nostalgic feeling to say that it was being done by my juniors itself when I was in DIT University in 4th year, and the juniors were in 3rd year. So I was seeing that how these people were creating those drawings, but I never knew that in the future I'll work again in this project. So the documentation was carried out by the juniors of the 3rd year, and they majorly focused on the built environment in the villages of Uttarkashi. So they documented these 4 villages: Raithal, Siror, Kamad and Barkot. Out of these 4, Kamad was the finalized one, and we'll talk about like why it was finalized and what were the criteria behind it. So just to give all of you a glimpse of it, the documentation, that how the students documented the traditional houses and what are the materials used basically for these construction. So these are the 3 comparative analysis you can see. The stone is being used for foundation. And as we can see in the modern predominantly RCC houses, stone has been combined with cement. In traditional one, slate is being used, but now the concrete blocks are emerging for walls. In the traditional one, timber is being used, and now wood from old house is being used for windows. So this is one of the comparative analysis. And just to illustrate further by drawing, it is quite visible that by the thickness of wall. So the red dotted portion is the new construction, and it is visible that the thickness of wall and how the thickness of wall is being varied in the second part of the drawing. And we are not sure that how much correct or appropriate this integration is, or how much strength it is going to provide to the overall structure. This is another drawing of the first floor plan. And now with the time, the extensions are being added, such as additional stories, verandas, the cattle shed, and few innovative techniques were being observed. For example, the stone blocks with cement mortar has been used. Aluminum sheet is being used for roofing. So initially we saw that how the timber is emerging, and now suddenly aluminum is coming. So this is another glimpse of the comparative analysis of documentation. And this is the drawing for the same. So it is visible that how the integration is happening, but not sure what are the techniques behind it. Now comes the technology assessment criteria. So the black one means what do you want to achieve, and the red one means how will you achieve it. In order to create one example, if I want to have hazard resistant earthquake flood building, or you can say construction, this will only be achieved if I make sure that the structural integrity of the building is proper. Another example, in order to achieve climate responsiveness, it is very important to make sure the indoor thermal comfort is achieved. So like this, the 2 categories were defined: non-negotiable and the important. And all these criteria were being addressed further. Now part 2. It is the most important one with the community, the participatory design exercise. So these are a few pictures that how the listening workshops or the participatory workshops was happening, and how it is important to listen from the community rather than just imposing on them our learnings. So based on their insights, their learnings, they sketched the design. It was sketched by the community members, that what are their requirements in a community building. So it is quite visible that they want a room. In Hindi they have written kamra, and M is for male, F is for female, for the washroom. And this is a kitchen, then there is a room, and in front there is a veranda. So this was a brief thought behind their learning, and we further created it. Part 3 was the most important one, as I mentioned before, and the most highlighted part. the capacity building of the community. It was divided in 2 levels. Level 1 was the production training, in which the community was trained as how do you produce compressed stabilized earth block, CSEB, and concrete block in the Kamad village itself. So these are the 1 or 2 glimpses of it, and in detail we'll dwell further. Training 2 was the production of timber truss, in which artisans were being sent to Forest Research Institute, Dehradun. They were trained over there, and this is what they have achieved. They themselves created this truss. Training 3 was production of plank and joist, another roofing, the modular prefab element for the roof. This was happening in Matli, which is 50 kilometers away from this village. Again, the people were being trained. How do you produce those products? So these are the major 3 trainings of the production one. Now, highlighting the each and every training with few more glimpses. This is the highlights of concrete block production, in which the experts were training the local people by giving them knowledge about the molds, about the proportion, the ingredients, and how do you use it. So this all was happening on the site itself. Everything was happening on site, procured on site, and implemented on the community building itself. So it was a cyclic process which was happening at the same time. Another glimpses of the mud brick production. So you can see that how the women are being trained to use the Tara Balram machine, and everything was happening on site. So these are the stack of bricks produced by them. And these are the highlights for timber truss. So these are the pictures of Forest Research Institute, Dehradun. And the experts are training them, teaching them how do you construct or how do you prepare the joints of a truss, so that when they are back to their village, same they can implement on their building for building 2 and building 3, making them responsible and enhancing their capacities. This was the final outcome, and this is what they have achieved, which was being implemented in the building 1 itself. They were further treated as how do you treat the cheat pine shingles, because it was very important to treat it. And like how the chemical or the mixing of chemicals was happening, how do you test it on the sample, and how do you further do it? So stage by stage, everything was happening. Training 2 was the production of plank and joist. And you can see that how in each and every step they are being trained, that how do you cast it, how do you place it, and how do you further remove it from the mold. This is for the reinforced cement concrete door and window frames. So they were being also taught that how do you produce the door window frames, because you can't use the wooden frames. It already makes the building very heavy, and the wood is also not available in abundant right now. So it is important to teach them this particular training as well. And now we have seen that how they were being trained to produce the material. Now we come on to the level 2, which was the construction training. That after you produce the material, how do you implement them? It's like theory and its implementation. So they were being made aware by the experts that how do you imply or those materials on ground, on the practical based thing. So lots of mock drill exercises were being conducted on ground in order to make them aware and in order to test their skills, like what they have learned and how are they going to implement it in the building. So these are the few hands-on exercise trainings happening on ground. And this is the overall view of the trainings and the masons. And this was the time where I joined this project, and my very first visit was from the site itself, and these trainings were happening on ground. And just to start now with the drawing, this is the community building at Kamad. And we have 2 stories. The ground floor plan have a community hall, kitchen, stove, veranda, and a corridor. On the first floor, we have one big room and a terrace. So from now, we'll talk about the technologies that how they were being introduced in this particular building. Technology 1 is for the walls. 2 is for the another building, like another wall for the same thing. 3 for the roof. 4 for the roof of the next building. And 5th is for the door and the windows. In the next slides, we'll see that what are these technologies and how they are being implemented in the building. Technology 1, compressed stabilized earth block. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the Tara Balram machine, which was provided by the organization itself. And the most important feature of this machine is that you don't require any machinery operations or electricity to operate it. It is very friendly in the sense that you can carry it from one place to another. So for building 1, it was right there on site. For building 2, it has been moved from one construction site to another. And the same will happen for building 3. So on site, the people and the women groups were producing these bricks and it was being implemented right there in the last picture, as you can see. And these are the specifications for it. The technology second is the concrete blocks, hollow and solid. So these are the molds and the machines that were provided to them. On site, masons were creating the blocks. And this picture shows that how the corner blocks are being used. So they are hollow in the sense to allow the reinforced bar to pass through it. And these are the specifications for the same. Third is the plank and joist for the flat roof. So you see like how the prefab elements is being casted on the site itself for the roof and they are being prepared there. So this particular element was coming from the Mathli, in which I have discussed before. The entrepreneur was creating that over there and it was being, you can say, transported to this particular site. Everything was happening in a very cyclic manner and everything was procured locally and the people were also using it on the site itself. Fourth is the most important one, the pine shingles truss for the sloping roof. So in this, they were trained at FRI, they came back, they learned and they implemented it further on the building roof. The fifth is the precast door window frames and these are the specifications for it. And sixth is very, very important and interesting one, the slow sand water filter. So we'll also talk about this technology ahead. And this filter was installed right next to the building in order to improve the drinking water conditions because the quality of drinking water is not at all appropriate. The reason being the presence of E. coli, which I'll talk further. So now to sum up, what is happening is local micro enterprise setup is being happening through production training, construction training, and the entrepreneur training. So this is the overall comprehensive picture till now what we have talked about. This is the glimpse of it. Now what is happening is you had participatory exercise with them, you taught them their skills, you upgraded them, they also implemented those skills in the site. Now our responsibility as an organization somewhat is reducing here because after all, these are the people, these are the anchors of the villages who will take it further and disseminate the knowledge learned to the further clusters of village. So it is important to give them the sense of ownership and responsibility. Hence, the first enterprise that was being set up was the carpenters one in that particular village itself. Second was the CACB, the mud bricks group enterprise for the women in that particular area. And the third one was the precast concrete products at Mathli. the person who was producing all those RCC elements and the tiles. So these three enterprises were being set up and they're still in the state of running. Enterprise 1 was the carpenter's enterprise, in which the person was producing the pine shingle roofing for the second roof. And the most important part was the chemical tank was being set up right in front of his enterprise. So now he himself will procure and treat the shingles. Like this, you are learning and executing your knowledge. In earlier stage, it was being coming from FRI, but now this particular entrepreneur will do the work, will do the job all by himself through the skills which he has achieved. Enterprise 2 was the CACB, and now the women groups are producing the bricks which will be used for the second building. So now, as you can see, the machine has been moved. Now it is on the second side of the building. The third one is the precast concrete products at Matli. And these are the few highlights of it, that what all is being produced: production of joist, production of planks, and production of door window frames. This is one interesting point. Now what is happening is, once he has received the power and the ownership, he has now learned how to expand his business by creating new product technologies. So like these products are quite common in few cities or few clusters, but this was not common in that particular area of Uttarkashi. Hence, it added value to that cluster. And the business was also being improved on the entrepreneur, because it received a very great response from the public. The people were using these products in their home, in the casting of their flooring, and in the casting of their backyard. So it received a great response. This is a very interesting one. Now what happened was, once the enterprise was being set up, the enterprise package, you can say a toolkit, was prepared for the entrepreneur. It is for them to understand that if they will produce X by X material in first year or second year, so this is the profit, the anticipated profit which they can achieve. And the second table shows on the right that how much is going to be the turnover and how much is going to be the investment. So this particular guide can be a reference to entrepreneurs or any local government body or enterprise development organizations to have a look, a reference look, a toolkit, that in order to expand their business or in order to know the loss or gains, this is the toolkit which they can refer to. And this particular package includes the assessment and capacity building processes of entrepreneur, market potential, and products in Uttarkashi district. So now this is the outcome. Till now we have seen lots of parts and processes, the trainings on the enterprises. This is the one which has been achieved. The most important part, as you can see, is the rubble the masonry. So what is happening is, the building is divided physically. Like if you see the building, the blocks are separated, but in the foundation, they are being tied together. Like the foundation is common. Hence, it will somewhat reduce the damage during the earthquake, and it will bind the building together. Even if the earthquake comes, building will move together, but it won't collapse because it's being held together intactly by the foundation itself. So this was one of the most important part of this proposed model. And you can see that what are the technologies being implemented in the roofing and the walling system. The precast plank and joist for the roof, the masonry for the foundation, the CACB bricks on the wall, concrete block, and the door window frames. These are few glimpses of the construction phases. This is very, very, very important. The drawing on the left is for us, for the architects to draw or to draft on these softwares. but the drawing on the right is for the community to understand in their local language, because it is not possible that each and every time we will be there. It is for them to understand a knowledge product for them, that in order to proceed further, this is what they can see and refer to. The details most importantly. So on each and every stage, lots of knowledge products were being developed as per their understanding in their local language, telling everything in detail. So you can see this is one of the T joint and the details for which is being explained. And this is like another example of how the masonry of stones is being done. And in Hindi, it is known as Ar Par Patthar. Like in English, we call this bond the header footer joints. Sorry, the header and stretcher joints. So in Hindi, it is known as Ar Par. So this is what the importance is about these products. So these are few on-site scenes that at times you need to have a thorough check that how the community and the artisans are using their knowledge. So at times there were few corrections and you have to make it happen right there, right on the ground to correct it further. And as per the understanding, they used to create nails which shows differences in inches, 26 inches, 2 inches, 12, and so on. And according to that, they used to bend it and implementation was happening right there. So see, this is just one of the example, but the entire building was being constructed like this. You see, you check, you make it implement. If it is not happening, you again do it. So it takes a lot of time, but it has to be done in the correct manner. And this was another example of the like how do you lay the reinforcement bars and the details for them. So my job was to make things happen on site if they're happening in the correct manner or not, to see the assessment on each and every level and to like make things happen, and most importantly the execution, that how whether it is happening right or not. So this is a few examples, and yes, this is another very interesting point. We have also heard a lot about this aspect in the first talk, and it is true that Devta culture holds a very important and crucial it is belief of the people in Uttarakhand, and without the Devta's permission, the local people, they can't move ahead, be it any decision, be it personal or professional. You have to abide the values, you have to respect their traditional values. So what was happening is in this picture, the people are literally asking Devta to seek permission for the construction of toilet, because as per our knowledge and understanding, the community building right next to us, we need a toilet, but right in front of the building there was this temple. So obviously people were not comfortable that they were not preferring to have a toilet in front of the temple. It is not exactly in front, but it in that particular cluster itself. So, but the Devta was not at all comfortable, and we didn't receive the permission to construct the toilet because of this particular thing. So you can't go against them. You have to abide their values. So this was one learning on site, and this is an insight into the another cultural aspect of the Garhwali region, that the local authentic cuisine. And whenever things used to happen on site, after that, we used to have good food prepared by the local community. So see how interesting it is to see every aspect is coming together on ground. The cultural, the economic, the social, and these are few glimpses. So on one hand, construction is happening, and on the other hand, the concrete block production is happening. Everything was happening on site, parallelly on ground itself, by the men and the women. Then this is a few glimpses at how the installation of pine shingle was being done by the community, the artisans who were trained at FRI. So they themselves came back, and now they're implementing their learnings here. And this is a very good movement to see that the community, the person himself drew this sketch, that he was seeing that how it is being done, and for his knowledge he drew it. So this is how you got to know that, okay, these people are trying to understand and trying to learn what we are trying to explain to them. And now comes the Jal Tara filter, which I had mentioned earlier. So the most important part is that it is a very friendly filter to use, and it has a proper kit in which these walls are there, and you can test it right there, right now. Like you can take that kit and test the quality of water. So for the reason which I had mentioned earlier, as you can see on the 10th number, the parameters includes E. coli, and these 7 areas are the nearby areas of that particular village. All the 7 areas were having this E. coli bacteria present in the water quality, which shows that how harmful this water was. Hence, this technology was proposed there, and the people were being trained. So you can see in the following pictures, right next to the community building was a primary school. So it was very important to create awareness amongst the school teachers and the students, because these are the people who will be there when we are not there. So the training were being given to them by the expertise in the following pictures, and they were being taught how do you use the water or how do you treat it. And this is one example. You can see that on the left it is the raw water, it is completely black, and on the right it is a treated water, that how the color has changed suddenly. So this was the comparative analysis done on the ground itself. And this is the overall picture of the community building. Yes, the extreme climatic conditions is one of the most challenging factor on ground when you are there, and it used to snow a lot. The pace of work used to stop, and it was very slow, but the work and the momentum has to go on. And then these were the technology assessment results. So if I'll just start with one example. This was the assessment for the walling options. First one is the masonry. The major point about this is, like, the bigger the footprint, the more balanced the technology is. For example, if I talk about the masonry, you can see the local economic component is good, affordability is fine, embodied energy is fine. Now, if I'll talk about the mud bricks, you can see how the affordability has declined. The job creation has increased, so does the critical resource usage and the local economy component. The third is the concrete block. Now you can see the comparison, that how much less is the critical resource usage and how more is the embodied energy. And this one is very interesting one. This is for the burnt clay bricks. You can see everything is very less in this. Affordability, job creation, economy component, everything. Thermal comfort, it's not even there. I mean, it's very less. So the major criteria behind reading this is, the bigger the plot area and the more balanced its shape, the more sustainable is the building technology. And all these values were being calculated based on the material and the labor consumption figures, the footprint, and the factors recorded during its actual construction of community during the project. So everything was being recorded, and based on that values, these are the results achieved. So this one is for the roofing options. The earlier one was for the walling. This is for the roof. So you can see the RCC slab, the reinforced cement slab, how much less everything is. And now suddenly the pine shingle one, you can see the factors have increased. In the most important one is the job creation and the thermal comfort, you can see. And this one is for the precast RCC plank and joist, in which affordability is quite good, followed by job creation and local economy component. So same, the bigger the plot, the more balanced the shape, the more sustainable is the technology. And now finally was the inauguration of this building, which happened on 30th October 2019. And it was inaugurated by one of the oldest member of the community itself. So it was a very good feeling to see that how these people have responded and accepted it. And they were the anchors, and these were the people who created that building. We were just executing the process. And it is another very nostalgic and very proud moment that you have your college name on the board as a partner, and you're standing right next to it. So yeah, it was very beautiful moment at that time, and for the college also, being the alumni of the college. And this is the overall team. And these are few knowledge products which were developed for the community. In everything was happening in the local language. Step by step processes was there, like how do you create that particular building material, or what are the steps behind it. So this is just two of them. Lots of them are being produced. And now we talk about that how everything which we have seen is getting linked with the SDGs, or what is the impact it is creating. The direct impact, which is the SDG 5, gender equality, women-based production, economic empowerment opportunities. We have seen that how it's happening. Sixth is the clean water and sanitation. We have seen that how the Jal Tara installed water filter is being used in order to ensure the safe drinking. Eighth is the good jobs in the economic growth. And this has been achieved by the creation of the local enterprise and services, linking it to the local market and resulting in the value addition in skills. Ninth is SDG 9, industry innovation and infrastructure. 10th is the sustainable cities and communities, definitely responding to disaster resilient and habitat infrastructure. 12th, responsible consumption. Yes, it has been achieved to some extent, preserving the resources and using it more efficiently. 13 is SDG 13, the climate action. Yes, it has responded to the low carbon construction options. And 17 is partnerships for the goals, and like how the cross linkage is being happened with the stakeholders to leverage the multiple benefits of this module. And these are the indirect links. First is the local economic growth and new income opportunities. And the SDG 4 is a quality education by enhancing their formal, like non-formal vocational skills through this development. So this is the overall picture, like how the SDGs are being addressed and what has been the impact on the livelihood of the people. And the last one is SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. This is what was being launched in August 2020, a proper toolkit, a proper habitat package for anybody in order to how do you construct an eco-friendly, disaster resilient houses or habitat. This is what you can refer to, and the link for the same will be available very soon on the websites, and it is available in Hindi as well as in English. So it has like step-by-step methodology for whatever technologies we have gone through so far. And the journey is still being continued for the second building. Same processes, same exercises being conducted on ground with the community. And this is what is happening for the upcoming, the second and third buildings. For this, we'll have a discussion regarding the challenges and lessons. The first factor is the geoclimatic location and the characteristics of mountain ecosystem, like how difficult it is and how challenging it was to manage all these things in order to make them happen. And the second is the enterprise sustainability and the market development, that how these things are responding to the market at the market level. This is very important, that in order to make it, like in order to continue it, in order to make it happen further, it is very important that the continued emphasis should be laid on training in disaster safe construction, and the supply chain should be strengthened. The market creation of green buildings should be strengthened, And the third one is the strengthening timber-based construction with scientific upgrades. So these are the few policy-driven factors which are recommended for the way forward. And with this, I open the ground for further discussions and feedback. In order, just to conclude, I would like to also mention that in the ongoing COVID scenario, the building was being used as a quarantine center and lots of online trainings was happening and people were using this particular building as a center and like we were communicating to them through like online thing. So this is what is it is very important that how these vulnerabilities are being accepted by the community, how they are responding in this situation. It is not just like the building is created and it is there, but during this difficult time, how it is responding to the built environment or to the people. So with this, I open the
Yes,
ground
ma'am.
and thank you so much.